I know a couple. His name is John, and hers is Mariah. And John is, well, I shouldn't say almost certainly, he is certainly a narcissistic personality disorder. Now, lots of us have narcissistic tendencies. If you Google it and you see the 9 criteria to be a narcissistic personality disorder, you have to have 5 of them, you'll discover that at some point in any month, for example, you'll do all of them. Because narcissism simply means focusing on ourselves. It's self-preservation. It's actually natural. So we all tend to have narcissistic, or another way to say it is selfish traits. The difference with a true narcissist, a narcissistic personality disorder, is that they can't ever stop it. Ever. The only word they know is me. And in John's world, that was the only word that he knew. Me, or him. So he made the money in the family, even though she raised the kids and did everything else. But because he made the money, it was his money. And she had to beg if she wanted any. It was all his. Even though he succeeded in his profession only because she supported him and took care of the kids. He allows her, get this, he says that. He allows her on occasion to use his money. I know, it's a little hard to believe that somebody could say that sentence, but it turns out this isn't rare. This isn't rare at all, that one person in the family controls the money because they make it and it's theirs. He participates in family activities, like with relatively small kids, only when he feels like it, or specifically to interfere with her parenting. So she tries to teach the kids loved, loving, and responsible, and he just wants to play. And so if a kid wakes up at 3 a.m, then he just goes in and plays with the kid and leaves the child sleep deprived, and then the mother has to deal with the sleep deprived child all day long, or has to stay up with the child the rest of the night. In other words, it's really quite a mess. And then in addition, he has a girlfriend on the side, and he's a narcissist. None of this is unusual for a narcissist. She wrote and she said, I finally told him that I need more money just to keep the household running. He gives her this meager allowance that just, barely allows the basic nutritional requirements to be satisfied. And he makes, let's call it, plenty more than that. And he responded, well, I'll see if I remember. In other words, I'll see if I remember next month when I dole out the money that you beg for. I'll see if I remember to give you more. She continues, I replied clearly, but not angrily, as I have done in the past. Anger is never helpful. I replied, I will text you a reminder to make it evident that I was serious. And maybe I didn't do it perfectly, as I did explain more than necessary, probably, about why I went over the usual budget before the end of the month. School supplies, blah, blah, blah. You can set up a budget, but it's kind of like planning a war. It's a perfect plan till the first shot is fired, and then it just goes to pieces. She has to over-explain everything because he demands it. She can't just want something like he can. No, she has to explain to his satisfaction because, after all, everything is his and everything's about him. So he gives her a very stingy budget, and the budget was established before they had children. Well, now they have small children and the budget's the same. And so he's budgeted no more for her because, well, frankly, he loves it when she has to ask. This is a perfect setup for a narcissist. By the way, none of this is all that rare. You think, oh, there just can't be people like this. It's estimated that about 3% of the population has narcissistic personality disorder. So, if you're in a room full of 100 people, probably 3 of them are narcissists. And they're so clever, read about them, that people see them as charming. They see them as persuasive. They very often, the incidence amongst CEOs, for example, is way higher than 3%. And in prisons, it's as high as 35%. CEOs were just slicker. So I'm responding to her. You're trying to work with a narcissist, and that's virtually impossible, but it's beautiful that you're trying. But you still feel like a slave to this man who has controlled you all your married life. You need to remember that you are never trapped. You feel trapped all the time because that's how he makes you feel. He puts a chain around each ankle, but you let him do it. Keep reminding him of what you need. If he doesn't respond after several reminders, then you just run out of money. Now, this may just sound bizarre to you and probably to every mother on earth, but instead of begging him for money at the end of the month, just run out. So when he reaches for something to eat or to prepare a meal because, he likes to cook, there won't be anything there. And he'll ask you, how come there's nothing there? And you'll say, well, because I ran out of money. And of course, he'll be furious. And you say, I decided not to beg you for money anymore. And we talked about how point to a single item in our entire place that is luxurious, unnecessary, frivolous. There isn't anything. So I told you I'm not going to keep begging you for money. So we just ran out. That will be impressive when he goes to prepare a meal or his children are crying because the kids don't have food. Similar to a recommendation I gave to a mother once who could never get her husband to get a job. And she said, what do I do? The kids are in the next room crying and they don't have any milk. I said, then you give him the kids. And after he's had to take care of a crying child long enough, maybe he'll be motivated enough to go get a job. But don't beg anymore. Don't feel trapped. So what will happen if you do this? Well, she was worried. She said, if I do this, he might hit me. I said, that would be lovely. And it turns out one occasion that she did this, he did hit her. And so they got a picture and the police came and they took a photograph and now that's in his record and he's much less likely to hit her the next time. He might do nothing and let the children cry. That's perfect too. Then you call child social services and you ask them to come out the next day and say, look, I've got no food at all. And look in my purse, I have no money and my husband doesn't give me enough to support the family. He has never in his life, from the time he was a little kid, he has been spoiled rotten. This is why I sometimes talk about entitled children and how dangerous it is to, like, for example, let a child believe that they have a genetic right to have a cell phone implanted in their forearm because it's entitled children that turn out like this. That's why this is so dangerous. Entitled people just think that the whole world revolves around them. And nobody has the guts to tell them otherwise. So he's never had to pay for his selfishness. You always have to pay for it. So you don't beg him. You just let him pay the natural price of his choices. He can explain to child social services why you have X $1,000s in the bank and in your purse you have nothing. And there's a child crying in the next room. You let him explain that. You take movies with your, listen to me, movies, I don't even know what they're called anymore, videos with your phone of your child crying in the next room and then take a video of the cabinets because when child social services come, you'll very likely have gone out and bought some food. We're never trapped. there's always something that we can do. New subject. I know a woman who's been growing steadily for years in real love and is far happier and more powerful than she once was. She has posted on her fridge and at her desk at work the following to remember. So it says this. It actually, pieces of paper don't say anything. It states this. Who I am. That's all it says. Now, by that, what she means is, who am I with all my innate gifts? Because when we know who we are, for sure, things can happen to us, but they don't change who we are. They don't steal who we are. That's why we become afraid. If somebody yells at us, somebody thinks badly of us, then we feel badly about ourselves. They take our feeling of self-worth. They can't do that if you know who you are. She wrote, number 2, how much I am loved by several people in my life and by God. And again, when you remember you're loved, what can people take from you? Your dignity? No. Or do to you. They can inconvenience you, but they can't really hurt you. When you know that you have the things that are the most important in the world, when you know that you have items 1 through 100 in priority, and somebody takes item 101 in priority, it's not such a big deal, is it? Number 3, she says, no need to perform for anybody, meaning just allow myself to be me. I don't need to impress anybody or let them know who I am because I already know who I am. This is very similar to the who I am. Number 4, patience as I practice handling bigger loads on a bigger field. This is good. That's a subtle one. We all have burdens, responsibilities, different circumstances, and they change from day to day, and sometimes they increase, and it appears that we fail. So she's saying, I want to be patient with myself as these bigger loads happen on a bigger field, because they're just an indication of where my limitations are and what I need to learn. They're not a reflection of my not having learned something or of my worth. Last, she wrote, love and teach my daughter. Instead of, she didn't write all this, but she wrote it to me. Instead of worrying about her happiness and controlling her, I'm not going to be concerned for her because that's just a version of fear. Concern says, I'm afraid you can't handle this by yourself. Why? Because you're weak and incapable, so you need rescuing. Concern, yes, it's possible that concern might be 12% unconditional love and 88% judgmental and doubting and skeptical and fearful and selfish. But the doubting part and the skeptical part way outweighs the 12%. People don't feel loved when you're concerned about them. They feel small. New subject. I know a woman who has traveled a very long way in her journey toward feeling loved and being loving. At work, she's been talking to a man who has considerable emotional difficulties, and he has enjoyed leaning on her emotionally. Well, who wouldn't? He's never had anybody, and she's willing to let him lean on her to some extent. But it's beginning to stress her out, like as in a lot. Like all during the day, he comes and sits at her desk and tells her about his problems and shares what's going on and needs her love. And this is at work. It's starting to interfere with her sleeping. She's starting to have medical problems because of the stress. So she tells me all this and she wonders what she should do. Because after all, she says, well, I should be loving, right? So I need to keep loving him. Yeah, that's a real trap, should. And people will use it on you. You should love me. And then they'll make some demand. This guy's beyond your ability to help. That should be pretty clear because you're giving him all this time and attention. He's not really changing. And now you're getting sick and can't sleep. It's not that complicated. After can't, because you can't help him as much as he needs, there's nothing else to say. We don't take on burdens we can't handle, or we suffer. And so does the other person. Not to mention that you'd have to be his counselor and coworker at the same time, which really can become problematic to not only you two, but to other people in the office who are going, does he live over there at her desk? It could actually affect your job, keeping your job. So he does need help, but not from you. So give him the name of somebody who might be able to help, perhaps a counselor, perhaps a wise person, perhaps a coach, and tell him that you can't talk to him about his personal life anymore. Now, notice I didn't say less, because if you say, we need to do this less, well, he'll do it 3% less the first day, and then he'll be right back to the former level by the next day. It's like using cocaine less. You tell him you can't do this at work anymore, and at that point, you are done. Then he will either do what you suggested and find some people who really can help him and succeed in his personal life and at work, or he won't. But it's not your responsibility. You're just not in a position where you can help him. If you do this, it's only a natural extension of you should love everybody around you. A natural extension of that is we'll then move to pick a continent, pick a state, pick a city, and love everybody in Kansas City or Zanzibar or Madagascar or wherever. We do what we can do. And almost always that's right in front of us. Often our family, friends, but at work, you don't need to be doing this. New subject. On many occasions, I've watched people experience an exciting event for the first time, or they describe it after the fact. Like, watch a child who tastes ice cream for the first time. Oh, I've never done this, but I'll bet you could YouTube that. They can hardly believe their good fortune. It's like, where has this been? I mean, you've been keeping this from me all my life. Are you kidding? That first lick of an ice cream cone is just really spectacular. A first kiss. Almost everybody can remember their first kiss. No kidding, because I've asked a lot of people. They can name the person that they kissed first, even though they haven't seen that person in 50 years. The first time that you take a breath underwater with a scuba device and discover that under the surface of the water you can breathe. That just about freaked me out. That was so cool. Your first solo parachute jump. Your first time driving a car by yourself. Ooh, that was a powerful feeling. Your very first sexual experience. Your first experience with any kind of excitement. We can remember those things. And they're extra powerful because they were first. There's nothing quite like the first time. I can still remember the name of the girl that I first kissed, even though I haven't seen her in more than 50 years. I wouldn't even have any idea where she lives or how to look her up. But after all these years, insanely, if I think of her name, because I'm teaching this principle to somebody, otherwise I never do, my heart still just for a second flutters because that first experience was so powerful. The first time is like, of anything, is like an introduction into a new world. Subsequent to that introduction, we can still find pleasure and fulfillment in similar experiences, but it doesn't quite match up to that first time. So if the first time is such a great experience, why talk about it? Why am I talking about this at all? Why not just search out as many such experiences as we can? All the first times of everything, because there's plenty of first times to try out. For many years, I have watched people try to recreate the sensation of the first time. And there's a real trap in that. Our first sexual experience, for example, can be so exciting and such a relief from the stress and loneliness of our lives that we then seek to recreate that excitement over and over, only to discover that we can't. We become stuck in a cycle that never ends, a cycle that prevents us from realizing that sex can become an important part of a committed relationship, but by itself cannot create genuine connection or happiness. I know a man an otherwise intelligent guy, who got married, and his first marriage was terrible because he was, pretty selfish. But his first sexual experiences with his first wife were memorable to him. So he got married again. And his second marriage was over the first night that they got married, the first sexual experience they had, because, in his words, not kidding, we have no end of bizarreness, she didn't smell right. She didn't smell bad, she just didn't smell right. She didn't duplicate the entire first experience that he'd had with his first wife. That's how exciting the first experience of something can be. Our first romantic relationship, even without sex, can be so exciting with its combination of feeling worthwhile, powerful, desired, and intimately connected emotionally, that we believe the secret of life is recreating those initial few weeks or months of emotionally narcotic bliss. I'm thinking of a man right now who, when he was at work, a year ago, a girl from across the room just winked at him and smiled. He obsessed about her, thought about her morning, noon, and night, could hardly sleep for a year as he kept trying to recreate that first intimate contact, and there was no sex involved. We tend to do that because it's so exciting. But then real life happens. Almost all of life is real life. There are very few first experiences in reality. And we find that a real relationship requires that we have to do things like, listen. Holy smokes. You mean I have to listen to this person? We have to learn to trust a partner and to unconditionally give as well as receive. And all of that requires guidance and practice and a kind of selflessness that we simply may not possess and may not be willing to learn. The same trap can occur with anything that makes us feel great for the first time. The first high on drugs, unforgettable. Anybody who's a cocaine addict can tell you about their first time. Really, all of them can, because I've asked them. The first adrenaline rush from skydiving and more. In our pursuit of recreating that first excitement, many of us become addicted to whatever gave us the initial rush. We are hooked by the first time. We love that feeling. So, what's the solution for this potential danger of futility and even addiction? If we find sufficient unconditional love in our lives, that doesn't flutter and come and go and doesn't come like fireworks and then it's gone. Everybody's been to a fireworks display and man, it's just a riot. I mean, boom, boom, explosions and lights and boom. And then suddenly it's over. All the lights, all the sound, done. If we find sufficient unconditional love in our lives, we become genuinely happy. Short-term and long-term. We have the foundation of fulfillment that grows with time and practice. And on top of that foundation, we can simply enjoy any number of exciting experiences without feeling compelled to seek them. That's the key. So I repeat, when we're genuinely happy, we simply enjoy every experience in the moment instead of feeling driven to seek and create excitement that's a lousy substitute for the happiness that we don't have. Happiness first, then add all the excitement that you want to. But excitement first, and hoping that that will turn into happiness, send me an email if that works out for you. I'm not advocating that we don't enjoy the first time in many experiences. What are you going to do? Say to a kid, now don't like this? In fact, I'm a proponent. Go for it. Enjoy your first experience in whatever. We just need to be aware of the potential problems with trying to recreate it and create happiness from it. That's all. Just be aware. That's all this has been about. New subject. I was talking to a woman who hung her head in shame and admitted that sometimes she likes seeing disasters. That's kind of an unusual thing to say, and you could see why she was hanging her head in shame. She says, I read the newspaper, and if there's a big, natural gas explosion somewhere, I kind of enjoy it. If there's a hurricane and 300 people died instead of 150 people, I like it even better. I like seeing higher death tolls. I like to see more people suffering. Now, that could sound a little psychotic, possibly evil, but I know her. It's not. It's still a response to pain. Every unproductive and unloving behavior is a response to pain. How could this possibly be in this case? Because all of her life, she has known nothing but pain, unending pain and loneliness and emptiness. And in the moment that she hears about a disaster, the bigger the better, she feels the drama of it, the excitement of it. It is an axiom amongst newspaper writers. If it bleeds, it leads, or television news programs. The bigger the disaster, the gorier, the worse. Now, if there are any children in the room, under the age of 12 who would be affected by these graphic images, you might want to take them to a different room. Well, everybody in the room just got bigger eyes or turned on their recording device so they could see it again later. That's all she's doing. She just had the guts to admit it. We love this stuff. A celebrity becomes really big, and then it turns out that the celebrity assaulted somebody, stole something, was on drugs, killed themselves. Oh, we just love those articles. We do. How do I know? Because those are the articles that are read most. Those are the pieces that get the most hits on YouTube. You want to prove what we like? That's what proves what it likes, is the number of hits something gets. She just feels the drama. It's energizing in the emptiness and blackness that otherwise dominate her life. Drama feels better than the nothingness of her emotions, because mostly she's buried her pain and she's left with kind of an emotional vacuum, nothing. There's more. She also feels a kind of bizarre connection to the people in a disaster because they share her pain. She likes talking about it. She actually feels connected to them. That is commonly seen in the victims of a disaster. Soldiers in battle often bond together in ways they never would in daily activities, ever. Put a group of guys together in a bar and they get drunk and they go home and they would never contact each other again. But if they share pain, There's something bonding about that. They're special together. They enjoy a special drama together. They support each other, sometimes even from a distance in their pain. And they understand each other about at least that one thing to some extent. Think about it. Most guys just don't exchange feelings like ever. So they're in a battle. Finally, there's somebody next to them who is in the same battle who had this similar, just for the sake of conversation, had the same experience they did. That doesn't occur for them with anything else. So it becomes a bonding thing. Same with this woman who enjoys disasters. She feels less alone. People in pain feel alone. Pretty much always. There are axioms written by philosophers that say, when you're in pain, you're by yourself. Nobody understands people who are in pain, and nobody can feel your actual pain, which further isolates you. When somebody else is in pain, we feel just a little less alone. Maybe they understand us a little, or maybe we understand them. So sometimes we even want to spread the pain around. No kidding. There's even a mean-spirited component to it. If I hurt, so will you. It's where vengeance comes from. You've hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. Let's share it. It's a complicated mess. But it's not because people are evil. It's because pain distorts everything. It overwhelms compassion, understanding, reason, everything good. This is why it's so important to feel loved enough that pain and fear don't overwhelm us. So we can stay ourselves, even when pain does happen, as it will. We need to get enough love so that we know who we are and can stay who we are, even when pain happens, so that pain doesn't tear us down and just destroy us. Love overpowers all in the end. It's the strongest force in the universe, but only if we know what it is and if we consciously choose it. It's not the most powerful force in our lives if we've never received it. So it's worth everything that we do to find it and share it. I know a woman who, Chris, we'll call her, who spent a lifetime not feeling understood or accepted or loved. She found real love, and her sense of peace and confidence grew. She plays the oboe, and she's always been afraid of performing in public. Most people are. Most people rate public speaking as more frightening than being shot at or killed. Really, they've studied this. Because when she stands up and performs in front of people, whether you play the oboe or whether you do a speech or whatever you do, it's an opportunity to be criticized by every single person there. And not just once, no, to be criticized with every note you play, with every word you speak. Every note is an opportunity to make a mistake. Are you kidding? And I'm going to stand up and play 1,000 notes? Yeah, I see why that would make people nervous. Sure can. Recently, she performed a particularly difficult piece. She did all the practicing required. For years, actually, she practiced this piece. But that wasn't enough. She needed to feel enough love to eliminate her fears, at which point she would be freed to simply express herself on the oboe. The oboe then became just a means of her expressing her soul, as opposed to an instrument with which she would perform and prove her worth, or in her case, all of her life, prove that she was defective, or using it to feel competent and worthwhile. Oh, she said, what a difference it makes to just play a musical instrument without fear, whether it's at home or on stage. Turns out it doesn't really matter. New subject. I know a couple who, after several years ended their marriage. And they come from a culture where divorces are fairly rare. You get married and you die married to the same person. But if divorces do occur, then both families will often get together, attempt to address unresolved conflicts between like all the members of the family. Because when there's a divorce, it's really common that the person on this side of the family takes the side of this spouse, and ugly things are said, and whatever stuff that was given to one person at the wedding turns out to be more important than anybody thought to the person who gave it to it. Divorces are family affairs just like marriages are. So in this particular culture, they tried to resolve these conflicts and make the divorce amicable if they can do it. Not a bad idea, actually. In theory, if we were sensible and not selfish human beings, this would be just delightful. In reality, though, and this is coming from the people in this particular culture, it often creates more animosity because neither divorcing partner is happy with how things have gone, or they wouldn't be divorcing. I mean, like, duh. And they have thoroughly spread dissension or lies or both among their families, who then feel badly toward the other family. Working all that out as a group rarely turns into a kumbaya experience. Just doesn't turn out like we hope. Good idea. Is it worth doing? Maybe. I would never tell somebody don't do it. So I don't really have an opinion. I'm just stating that there are potential problems with this. So the man in this couple demanded actually, that his wife would participate in this formal tradition. Now, a little background is that he had controlled her in every other imaginable way in life too, emotionally, monetarily, every way. And so he demanded that she participate in this divorce. Wouldn't be a ceremony, not celebration so much, this divorce event. And she refused. Her experience had been that he was consistently emotionally abusive and that he inflamed the emotions of his family, so she saw this gathering only as another opportunity to be attacked and for her family to be attacked. She's almost certainly right. The wife had left a number of her personal possessions at the couple's home when she left, and the husband said that he would return these things only at the time of the two-family divorce gathering. In other words, he was extorting her. You don't do it my way, then you ain't getting the stuff that we got here, like jewelry or whatever. Well, she still refused. So we're at an apparent impasse. So they shared messages with me. He said this to me: there are some cultural traditions which can make the separation a pleasant experience. I cannot see how such a gesture could be anything but positive. Like I said, I can see possible benefits. My response to him: doesn't really matter whether it's traditional. You're using the word traditional to say that, well, it's tradition, so she really has to do it. You're using cultural tradition as a way of forcing her to do what you want. Again, which is what you did all of your marriage with her. And that you're forcing her to do what you want is exactly why she finally left you. You're forcing her to do what you want, using whatever apparently reasonable excuses you could come up with. And here you are proving that she's not lying about the reasons for her leaving, which I didn't suspect anyway. What does matter is what she wants. And you're not considering that at all. You're saying it's traditional and I want it, so it has to happen. No, that's just not true. If I want to do something and Donna doesn't want to do something, and we're going to do it together, then we don't do it. If two people are doing something, pick a thing. Two people are dancing. Two people are doing tandem high diving in the Olympics. It only takes one person to bring the event to an end. That should be like really kind of obvious. If one partner, in this case, you, vigorously supported by your mother, wants something to happen, anything, the divorce thing or anything else, but the other party, your wife, does not want to do that, then the event doesn't happen. You can ask for anything you want, but you can't make somebody do something you want. We just don't have that right. That completely abrogates or denies the law of choice. It's really easy to understand if you make it more extreme. So let's do. If you want sex from somebody, but they don't, what's the right thing? Well, I want it, so you have to. No, it means it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter what cultural or biological or whimsical excuse you can come up with to justify what you want if the other person doesn't want it. Done. He responded, well, she's just dictated everything during this divorce process since she's left home. She refuses to see me. Yeah, she gets to do this. She's not talking to me. And I've agreed to all of her demands. Well, you're not quite seeing this right. She does get, you don't get to unilaterally choose something that both of you are doing. She gets to choose unilaterally not to do anything she dislikes. I always get to choose not to do something for you. You don't get to come to me and say, if you love me, you have to do this. Or because I need this thing, you have to do this thing. Look at your list. Does it take only you or even both of you to agree that she doesn't want to see you? No, she gets to decide on her own. I don't want to see him. It's really been just a miserable several years and I don't want to do it. Done. You don't get to insist on that. What's the alternative? You want to see her, so she has to? She can be what? Chained to a tree while you see her? Because essentially that's what you're saying. And that would be kind of obviously wrong to anybody. Do you get to make the decision whether she will talk to you? So first it was see you. Do you get to make the decision whether she'll talk to you? No, she gets to make that decision. And if she decides to talk to you and you decide to talk to her, now we have a conversation. But you both have to make your decision independently. Otherwise, you become essentially king of the world and she becomes a slave, which is why she's leaving. And I'm not exaggerating. You want to control what she chooses, which violates the most important law of the universe, choice. Notice, she isn't making you do anything. Go through all the list of things that you're asking her to do, and she's not making you do a thing. You can choose to talk to her all day long from now to the rest of your life, but you can't make her be in the room and listen to you. So see, she's not stopping you from doing anything. She's just making her own choices and you don't like them. She's chosen not to participate. You're trying to make her do this traditional event. You're controlling her. She's not controlling you. That's how simple this is. He responded, I feel it would be best to conduct this the way this marriage started, with both families involved. His degree of listening here is very similar to the degree of listening that he did during his marriage, which is why she left. Maybe marriage did start with both families, but you both agreed to have them there. In this case, she does not. So you don't get to decide. It's as simple as the law of choice. Memorize this, everybody. You get to choose what you do, but not if it negates the choice of another person. Let me say it again. You get to choose whatever you do. Jump off a cliff if you wish to. But you don't get to negate the choice of another person who says, I prefer not to jump off the cliff. You don't get to grab them and throw them off with you. She's not controlling your choice. You can still have the dinner. You can have the meeting with her family if you'd like. Call them up and say, I want to have this divorce ceremony. but she gets to choose not to be there. And this applies to all of us. You make your choice, but not one that controls the choice of another person. It's really that simple. New subject. I heard this from a supervisor who was unusually level-headed in describing a problem employee. So the supervisor wrote this: I head up a team of employees in our company, and recently I was given a new team member. New people always require a period of adjustment. Well, duh. I mean, in the beginning, where's the bathroom and where do I sit? And they don't know anything. But this man, this new hire, is struggling more than most. That's not the main problem. The main problem is that he's struggling without making any genuine attempt to learn and change. He just complains how difficult things are. He's not really trying to learn, and he doesn't listen. So how do I teach him anything? I sat him down and I told him that he has a choice. He has a choice to stay here in this job on the team, but that would require considerable teachability and learning on his part. That is not an unreasonable demand because he's being paid. He's not a volunteer. So you can stay, but you'd have to be teachable and learn, or you can transfer out. And I will help you with that, which is really kind of sweet because she's not this, actually the supervisor's a he. He didn't say, I'll fire you, which he could. He just says, I'll help you find a job somewhere else, possibly that fits your skill set better. Perhaps I chose you for the wrong job. The supervisor continues. He listened to what my standards for performance are, which is what supervisors are supposed to do, and what I'm willing to do to teach him the requirements of the job. He was humble. He was humble. I'm reading these words and I can barely believe I'm reading them. He was humble and matter of fact when he said he felt that the job I described was simply too much for him. The job was too hard. I was not disappointed or contemptuous when I simply told him that I really appreciated his honesty. I will have him in the room with me when I call the main office, and I request that he be transferred to a job that doesn't require this particular set of skills. So it turns out this guy isn't an unteachable moron, which, the supervisor at least entertained the possibility of. No, he's just overwhelmed by a job that appears to be too much for him. So let's get a job that's different. Maybe not even easier, just different. I've hired many people in my life in business, and I'll never forget the lady that I almost fired and discovered that she'd just simply never been taught her job by her supervisor, who turned out to be me. We need to teach people what their responsibilities are. If they're not willing to learn, you need to let them go absolutely as soon as possible, because that part's not going to change. You can teach somebody a skill, but you can't teach them teachability. And you may discover that the job is simply too much and find something that's more suitable for them. But the supervisor continues. By having the employee there, when I make the phone call to the head office, he can know for certain what I said and know that I was honest about his abilities and his lack of abilities in certain areas. This is a really beautiful thing to read from a supervisor at work. Employees need to be told what is required without condemning them, and she did that. She described the job clearly, both what was expected and what would be given for support. The employee said, "Yeah, I can't handle that." Well, now the answer is pretty obvious, isn't it? He's gone. If there's another position in the company that he can fill, then maybe he'll still be working there. If there isn't, then he would have to be let go. But to continue to have him in that position does the company a disservice, and it does the employee a disservice. But because can you imagine how frustrated he went home every day, not feeling like he can do the job, being paid to do the job, knowing that other people were expecting him to learn the job, so he learned to just hate going to work. We need to match people correctly to their jobs, to their spouses. We need to match our kids to their responsibilities with greater wisdom. Not everybody can do everything. And the better we do in the matching, the better the results will end up in the end. And of course, everybody does better when they feel loved while they're being taught, as this supervisor did with the employee who just couldn't handle the job. We'll see you in a week.